Hi everyone, it's Lorelai. All right, this is going to be a long, confusing devlog because I'm off script. I didn't feel like writing a script of all the points that I wanted to talk about. And I would like to remind you that these are not tutorials, but rather if you would like to use them as inspiration for your own game, you can also try to follow along. But for the most part, this is just me logging about how I'm going about making my game. Sorry to disappoint you. So in this episode, I wanted to go over how I made it so that the mouse cursor can interact with anything that's on the menu scene. And you can't see it, it's invisible. I probably should have made it visible for this video, but there's an action button down here, okay? And let me show you what that looks like. Right now it looks like this. Okay, and eventually you'll be able to click this. You'll also be able to click a keyboard hotkey to activate this. And this is called jump, or hop rather. This is called hop, where you can jump somewhere around and then stun enemies when you land. Because they're bunnies, get it? Wow. Anyway, I wanted this button to be on the menu, the menu scene, because I wanted it to be on every scene that is in the game, right? Or at least anyone where I've set menu scene, menu 1 to be the default menu. I could always turn it off in main cities because you're probably not going to be using any actions, but that's a decision for later. I got it working is the biggest thing. Okay, so this engine does not like the mouse. This engine is made for controller, basically for everything. Even when you're going into spoiler alert, the conditionals, and you want to set an input, there's no mouse, right? There's nothing, because it really doesn't like the mouse. I had to brute force this mouse logic into the engine, and it's working, so it's possible, and I'm excited about it. Basically, the menu scene cannot interact with any of the other scenes except through switches and variables. But that's it. I could not execute object action. I could not use a field of vision to do the same sort of logic that I did for my enemy targeting system. I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't get the cursor to interact with the menu at all until I figured out this weird workaround. So the biggest issue was that the only variable that's built in right now in Pixel Game Maker MV at the time of recording this, which is June 2021, there is no built-in screen variable for the mouse. It only tracks where the mouse is on the map. So if I show you, well, this is a terrible example. If I show you on this scene, okay, so right now, let me move away from the slimes. Right now, this little graphic is following my mouse based off of the map, okay, the map coordinates. So if I go into object data, you see the follow mouse main cursor, okay, and it's position, 800 plus, right, for the X. This didn't work for the menu because the menu isn't that big. The menu is the size of my screen, which is technically 640 by 320, but 2 times enlarged. So it looks like it's 1280 by 720, but it's not. I'm very sneaky. So if my mouse was over here at 900 something, it was not on the menu. Actually, I can just show it to you. Let me show this to you. So if I put cursor, let's just put the target cursor. Let's just put the main cursor, I guess, somewhere on the menu, and I press play. Well, okay, it still shows up on the other layer because I didn't remove it, but there, you can see it there, okay, because it's following the XY coordinate of the map, the only variable that I have access to. So when I go over here, it's gone because that is off that first scene. Well, the first quadrant, I guess, of the of the map. This is very confusing. I'm so sorry. Of this. It's gone from this. This is the size of my screen. So when my map is off of that, it doesn't work. And again, it's because there's no screen variable. RPG Maker has a screen variable, but this one does not. So I had to make one myself. So let's delete that. We don't need that. Okay. It took me forever to figure out how to make it myself because I've never done it before. You know, maybe if you're seasoned pro vets at game dev, you would be like, oh, this is obvious. But I've never done it before. So I had to think really creatively. And actually, I ended up thinking while I was trying to go to sleep one night. And I came up with this idea of using a grid. So if I turn on my grid right now, it's at no opacity. I'll turn it up like this and press play. Okay, so this is my grid. Okay, this is what the screen is. And this grid is based off of the one object on the scene, on the map in the game. Let's say that the one object on the map that is relatively constant in where it is on the map. And that is the player. That is the main player, because the camera is going to follow the main player and it's almost always going to be in the center. Note that you do have to make sure you design your maps with enough space on the edges so that when you're up here, right, she's not center anymore. So this is an issue, right? See how it doesn't work until I get like all the way up here. So that's an issue. I'm going to have to fix that. So always make sure there's enough leeway, I guess there's enough padding around the edges of the map so that when you're, down there, you're always in the center. Okay. We're going to be using this playable circle rather, because if you see the playable circle is almost exactly in the center, we're going to be using that center point as a reference for where this is on the map. And these numbers, actually, I don't think I got them right of what pluses and minuses they are. I just did it. I just whatevered it. Okay. But in my brain, I was like, okay. So this icon will always be where my player circle is, but minus 80. It will always be 80 away from where my player circle is. And it will always be about 130, 140 down from where my player circle is. And I could use that information to figure out where my mouse cursor needed to be for it to do this hover state, for it to be able to interact at all with this. It's actually not interacting with this. What's happening is it's watching my cursor and it's seeing if my cursor is matching a particular variables, which is in this case, whatever minus 80 from where I am, and either minus 140 or plus 140, I don't know, from also where I am. Does that make sense? So what I needed to do was find a part of the game that would be always consistent. And with the smooth camera, it's actually a little messed up because if you see, it'll like go away for a second because of the smooth camera. So it doesn't really work very well with the smooth camera, but I can fix that, I think, by just changing how the smooth camera operates. There's already some padding, like it's not one exact number here, but we'll go into that. All right, so if that makes sense, right? I needed to find one spot that never changed and then determine where the icon was based off of that number, because this is its own number. Right, playable circle at 713 and 258. So I wanted to minus 80-ish from 713, and I wanted to minus 140-ish from 258. And then when my cursor reaches that area, that is when this goes off. So let's look at it. Let's look at this. First, I'm going to turn my grid down so it's not really annoying. I use those numbers exactly, like minus 80, minus 140 at first, but then I figured out a way to not have to do that. So I could technically move. I wish I knew. I should probably have a placeholder graphic so I can see where this is. I can technically move this now and I don't have to change anything. It still works, which is nice. So that means I can use this logic for maybe everything on the menu. We'll see. Right now it works for this. Oops. Right now it works for this, so I'm happy. Let's bring that back down. All right, let's go into objects. This is the main object. This object is doing almost everything. Okay. We also have the grid. The grid is going to stay on the map, and this is also doing some stuff. I don't think playable circle is doing anything. It's destroying the grid just for the grid to be re-added. Yeah, okay. So the playable circle is adding the grid as its child. So if it's destroyed, it'll just come back when the playable circle comes back. Because if you remember, the playable circle gets destroyed whenever I press a new button. So I also needed to destroy the grid, but the grid gets regenerated because it is a connected object. It is a child object of the player circle. I hope that makes sense. But most of the action is on the action button. The grid itself is what's calculating where the center of the screen is. Okay, so we've got this little loop here, and I'm changing a common variable, screen map center X. I'm changing screen map center X to the playable circle's X coordinate. Okay, and then I'm doing the same here with screen map center Y. I'm changing this variable to the playable circle's Y coordinate. So now I'll always have, and I call it screen map center because it's the center of the screen, but it's technically the map's coordinates. Because again, the playable circle is almost always going to be in the middle of the screen, and I wanted those XY coordinates. So this object is tracking that and putting that into a variable. Now, action button is doing like everything else, as you can see. It's very colorful. These are mostly placeholder graphics. We'll see if I keep them. I don't know. This is the main guy here. We've got idle X and we've got idle Y. And there's a lot going on here, but it's fine. It's not actually that bad. I put all of the X stuff on idle X and all of the Y stuff on idle Y just to make it a little more visually appealing. So let's just break it down, right? Let's go one by one. So first, the action button. The action button is on the menu. Remember that. So the action button itself does have its own XY coordinate, and we'll get to that down here maybe. I don't know. But first, what we're doing is we are setting a self variable, an object self variable screen X to what the screen map center X is that we got from the grid, where the playable circle is. There, let's say that, okay? The screen X now has the number of where the playable circle is, okay? So we've got screen X. We have this reset button here because if we did not reset when we are subtracting, if we're subtracting and going back and forth, we are forever subtracting. And then it becomes like an infinity negative number, which wasn't working. So we have to reset. I have this set to reset because I'm actually editing some of these numbers here, the default value here. It just makes it a lot easier than going in and finding where I'm using that number, that variable. So we're just resetting it towards the beginning of the list. Okay. This is confused. Okay. This variable or this runtime action is calculating where the icon is relative to the center of the screen, which took me a while to get. Before I wasn't doing this, before I had static numbers that I was using. So if we turn the grid back on, where the heck is that here? Okay. If we turn the grid back on, you know how before I would say, okay, minus 80, and then I would put the minus 80 into the equation. I didn't want to have to do that because I wanted to be able to move this around like I showed you. So what this variable is doing is it's determining how far away this is from the center. So I needed first to determine what the center is, and then I needed to subtract that. So if I have the XY coordinate of this, which is a static number because it doesn't move because it's on the menu screen, right? It's at 228 and 327. And if I move around, it does not change because it's on the menu. It's not moving with me, right? Which is a good thing. So I needed to subtract the center No, I needed to subtract my X position from the center to determine how far away from the center it was. I wanted to get this 80. I wanted to get this 80 number without having to manually put in that 80 number. Okay, does that make sense? So what I did was let's see here. I think I had it as a little note to myself, distance from center. I didn't know what was going on at this point. So you can see like ish. So the center of the screen is 320 because I know that the screen is 640. So the center is 380 minus 8, which is half of the icon's width-ish, because 8 is not half of the icon's width. 16 is the half, but 16 wasn't working very well, so I made it 8. So it's half of the half. I think I actually made it 4. Yeah, I ended up making it 4, and I think it just has to do with, I don't know, the center of the object. I don't know, but I ended up making it 4. Y made much more sense. It's just 180 minus half of its height, 8. So 172. But for this one, I ended up just messing with the number until it felt right. So 316, okay, was around the center. Distance from center. So this is, is it getting confusing yet? Is it getting confusing yet? This is what I am subtracting to determine the 80. Okay, let's move on. Let's just pretend you guys understand what the heck I'm talking about. If I was making a tutorial, I would break this down some more, but I did this last night and I'm trying to remember exactly what I was doing, but that's the logic, is I needed to determine how far away it was from the center. Okay? All right, so that's what this is. Distance from center, subtract my X coordinate, so the 230-ish. Okay? Okay. Next, we are then subtracting how far away I am from the center from my screen X. And my screen X, if you remember, is where the center of the screen is. Screen X is screen map center X. So we're subtracting how far away I am from the center. Okay? We got the 80 from this number. We got the minus 80 from this number, or the plus 80. I don't know if it's a positive or a negative. Okay, so we got that from that number, and now we're subtracting it from our screen X. So the center minus 80. This is what's determining where we are on the screen, okay? And then I'm setting it, this is just me setting that number to a common variable so I could see it during testing. This is not necessary. I can delete this. In fact, I probably will later. And that's because I will show you. If I go down to action button and click details, nothing pops up. It's so freaking annoying. I can't actually see what its variables and switches are under action button 1 because it's a menu item. I don't know. But if I go into common variables, I can see it here. So the action 1x is 1008, where it is on the screen. Okay, so now it's 793, and now it's 629, and now it's 434, because it's doing this constant math. It's doing constant equations to determine how far away from the center I am to the left, and then eventually, up and down for the y. But that logic is exactly the same as the X. Okay, so I just did that so I could see. The screen map bottom left X and Y was a test. I'm gonna delete those later if you see. Okay, so I set it. Now we've got the X and presumably the Y. We've got the X and the Y of the center of the center of this icon relative to the center of the map. Okay, so if I put my mouse over here, it would end up having to be in the exact right spot for this to pop up. So it would have to be, my mouse cursor would have to be at 618 and 392 exactly. Well, I didn't want that, right? I wanted to be able to just be in the vicinity of this for it to work, okay? So I just added some padding. So if we went to variable management, we've got hover padding, which I have a default value set to 20. And I could set this to like 100. And what this will do is it will make it like really freaking big, right? 20 seems like a good number. And Basically, all this is doing is it is adding and subtracting 20 from the x and y coordinate. So first I'm setting the x minus padding variable to the screen x because I need that number originally, which if you remember is all the way up here, is the subtracted number. Okay, so x minus padding is that number. And then what I'm doing is I am subtracting 20 from that number. And then I'm doing the same for x plus padding. I'm setting it to screen x. And then I'm adding that hover padding, that 20, to that variable. So when I'm tracking the mouse, it has like a plus minus 20 all around it. Okay, and it's the same for the y. Okay, so this was all x. There's also y. It's the same exact thing. All right, so if we go into common actions, we can see how this is actually working. So first, the first common action I have here is Deirdre hover text. I wish I could drag it down to be with these other 4, but it does not let me drag. So I will just leave it be. The first condition to set this, okay, so this is actually, I'll skip ahead. This is executing object action, Deirdre hover text, which is this one, which is show text this. I'm using the action text plugin because I think it's cool. This will definitely work with any other text, okay? In fact, it worked in my testing from the built-in text display. You can use the other plugin, I'm sure, but I'm using action text just because. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to get, right? This is what I want. I want this to hover. So we're first checking if the main character is 1, because as you can see, I've got all of the party members in this one action button. So this action button is going to act as every party member's first ability, okay? And that's just to make things cleaner, but also more concise for me. So first we want to see if the main party member is 1, and then we're checking the mouse coordinates, okay? So we're checking to see if the mouse coordinate is the object's x minus padding, which is the screen x, minus 20. So it has to be greater than the screen x minus 20, so greater. And then we're checking if it's less than the plus padding, so the screen x plus 20, if it's greater than that. And then same with the y, if it's greater than the y minus the padding and then less than the y plus the padding. And so that's sort of triangulating. Is that the right word? Because it's technically kind of like a square. This is how it's squaring where the mouse is, plus or minus, right? So if we actually look here, if it's 1008 on the x-axis and our cursor up here, you can see is 1022. Let's go down. We're going to, once it hits 1028, it should go off. Yeah. Well, okay. 1027 because it's not equal to. It's greater than or equal to. And then also the y, right? The y, 389. If it's 380 right now, then yeah, it's between that padding. Okay. Whew. Wow. What an adventure. So we've got all that set. That's basically the video. There's also setting the whose action it is. So if I switch to, let's get rid of all this. This is gross. If I switch to Nisha, it changes to Nisha's. If I switch to Belle, it changes to Belle's. And then if I'm Fiona, it'll switch to Fiona. This is pretty simple stuff. It was just if the current main character is whatever number and the loop is off, because otherwise that loop would cause it to spam and that was an issue, turn the loop on and then execute Deirdre main. And then here's almost kind of the same logic here. If the current main character is 1, then it becomes Deirdre main, and then Deirdre main just executes idle x. So then it goes straight to this little loop. What's going on is that idle x is set to take over a motion. So it's taking over this motion. Okay. And maybe eventually what I can do is set, where is that? Change animation set to specifically Deirdre. But right now this is working, so it's okay. But because Deirdre has this animation and then idle x is taking over that animation, that is why it's able to look different, right? It's basically just looking different. And then the hover text is, again, just checking to see who the main character is. If it's 3, then we will execute bell hover text, which is this one. Okay. And these are all set to unconditionally, or with no input. I'm sorry, I changed that recently. With no input, remove text. So remove the text and then execute set main, just in case I'm having it go to set main instead of back to bell. Well, first of all, because I'm using all of them to go straight here. But this is also just a fail safe in case I switch party members and there's a mess. So this no input is because I wanted to be able to run away, but still have that hovered. As you can see, it blinks, and that is because of the smooth camera. Okay, because this is moving, right? So the grid is the same, but the center is moving because of the smooth camera. So I need to figure out a way to fix that, but I'll do that later. Another issue is there's an overlap. If I have more than one selected, if I go away, it'll go back to normal, but I need to figure out a way to fix that too. I tried setting it so that like if you have no input, because I wanted to move around before it remove the text. And I also set it to like check if 1, 2, 3 or 4 was pressed before not, removing it. Or no, do remove if 1, 2, 3 or 4 is pressed, but it wasn't working for some reason. So I don't know. Let's see. Is there anything I missed? The cursor. The cursor. This was a big one. So quickly, let's go over the cursor. Where the heck is that? I've got these 3 cursors. The first cursor, I think, is the transparent one, and this is following the mouse. Then we've got the displayed cursor, which I want to make this look nice. Okay. Then we have the displayed cursor, which is the child of the main cursor, and this is just what's displaying. I don't know why. I don't remember my reasoning of having a parent and a child object. That's what it is right now. And then the target cursor is the same as before. This hasn't changed. Okay, the displayed cursor is what's changed. So now instead of displaying it through the actual motion, I have it set to transparent. So here's normal, here's transparent. Okay, instead of that, I have a loop of display image. This is displaying the cursor instead. Cursor 1, no time limit. And I have it set here to position frontmost plus menu scene. So this means that even though this cursor is on the scene and not the menu, I am able to put it on top of the menu. Okay, and that's how the cursor appears on top of the buttons and the text and all of that fun stuff. I don't know how this is going to slow down my game. In fact, if I set it to no time limit or off no time limit, I wonder if that will help. It seems fine. So maybe I'll do that because I don't want the image to be spamming. I don't know how the game is going to process this, but so far so good. And it's working, right? And I still have 60 FPS up here. So I don't know. Actually, it's dropping when I do this. Oh, it's probably dropping because this is spamming. Because this is going straight to, let me show you. This is going with no input to remove, but it's spamming between these two because the cursor is still in this position to appear. I could probably fix this with a switch instead of it having to spam between them. I could probably fix it with a switch, but whatever, it's fine for now. It's fine for now. There's a big FPS drop, but what are you going to do? Optimization issues is very typical, but I can figure that out later, I guess. I think that's everything. I think that's all I wanted to go over. If you have a better idea for this system, good for you. I tried so many things. This is what worked. You can try to school me in the comments, and I would be very interested actually to hear your ideas. Maybe I missed something, but I feel like I tried. I feel like I tried everything. So, okay. Yeah, I appreciate you guys watching this far. I hope you learned something. Again, it was a little confusing, a little rough around the edges, but this is not a tutorial. This is a devlog. So I think that's all. Again, I think I mentioned this last episode, but the logs will probably be slowing down now because I'm catching up. I'm catching up in how many I have in my backlog, and I don't want to have to rush these out. So just don't expect them every other day like they have been. Okay? Okay. Love you guys. I will talk to you later. Bye.